At the heart of China's golden age stood two women, heirs to the legacy of Wu Zetian, the only female emperor in Chinese history, who helped reshape the political landscape of the Tang Dynasty. One was born the noblest of princesses, the other a palace slave from birth. Yet both were raised, trusted, and profoundly shaped by Wu Zetian herself. Princess Taiping, Wu's only daughter, was said to bear a striking resemblance to her mother in beauty, intellect, and character. Shangguan Wan'er, often respected as the only female chancellor in Chinese history, rose from slavery to power through her own brilliance. Selected, nurtured, and empowered by Wu Zetian, she gained fame and authority through her wisdom and talent. Close in age and cherished by Wu, both women rose to unprecedented political heights after she stepped down from the throne. At their peak, they could sway emperors, command court affairs, and alter the destiny of an empire. In their rise and fall, they danced through the center of imperial politics, navigating whirlpools of intrigue and weathering storm after storm of conspiracy. Their names were later criticized, demonized, and distorted by political enemies and historians alike. Their relationship, complex, powerful, and often controversial, was for centuries obscured in the fog of history. In this video, we explore their brilliance and loyalty, love and betrayal, ambition and despair, triumph and downfall. A journey through the gilded cage of Tang politics where every victory carried a cost. When Emperor Gaozong and Empress Wu ascended to power, ushering in an era of imperial prosperity, their youngest child entered the world, a radiant daughter who would become their only surviving girl. This princess inherited not only her mother's striking beauty, but also Wu Zetian's piercing intellect and regal poise, securing her place as the most cherished jewel of the imperial family. After the death of Wu's mother, the young princess was frequently dispatched to offer prayers at a royal Taoist temple, a practice believed to channel filial piety into blessings for ancestors. It was here she received the name Taiping, meaning Great Peace, a monastic title imbued with her parents' fervent hope that their daughter might embody the stability their reign sought to create. When a foreign king later sought her hand in marriage, her parents responded with cunning pageantry. They erected an opulent Taoist temple within the palace walls, proclaimed Taiping its ordained nun, and deftly declined the proposal under the veil of sacred vows. Shielded by this artifice, Taiping's youth unfolded in rarefied privilege, a gilded existence of intellectual cultivation and courtly pleasures. Yet the princess was no passive ornament. As she came of age, she reminded her parents, with bold confidence, that it was time for her to marry. After a burst of laughter, her parents agreed. Whether it was by their arrangement or with Taiping's own approval, they chose an exceptional husband for her, Shui Shao, a nobleman of outstanding talent and charm, and the youngest son of Emperor Gaozong's sister. The wedding that followed was breathtaking, lavish, magnificent, and unforgettable, a grand celebration befitting the union of two noble souls. Princess Taiping and Shui Shao's marriage was blissful and harmonious. Together, they had 2 sons and 2 daughters, forming a picture-perfect family. For 7 joyful years, Taiping lived as a loving wife and devoted mother. At the same time, when Taiping entered the world amidst imperial splendor and boundless affection, the swaddled Shangguan Wan'er began her life's journey under entirely different circumstances. Wan'er was born into a noble and respected family. Her grandfather had served as a chancellor under Emperor Gaozong. However, his career met a tragic end. After gravely displeasing Empress Wu, both Wan'er's grandfather and father were executed under accusations of treason. Wan'er, still an infant at the time, and her mother were spared but condemned to live as palace slaves, serving within the walls of the imperial court. Despite this fall from grace, fate would carve a different path for Wan'er. At that time, Empress Wu had already begun advancing a bold initiative, the education of palace maids. As a female ruler navigating a male-dominated realm, Wu recognized the need for capable, literate women, not only from noble families, but also from within the palace, to assist in drafting imperial edicts, managing administration, and participating in political affairs. Thus, though she entered the palace as a slave, Wan'er was granted the opportunity to study. Her mother, a well-educated noblewoman herself, became her first and most dedicated teacher. In time, Wan'er's extraordinary talent began to shine. Her brilliance echoed through the palace corridors, eventually reaching the ears of the Empress herself. Wu summoned the 13-year-old girl and tasked her with writing an essay on the spot. Without hesitation, pause, or correction, Wan'er composed a piece that was fluent, elegant, and dazzlingly beautiful in both structure and style. Her ideas flowed seamlessly, her words sparkled with elegance, as though the composition had been preordained. Deeply impressed, Wu made an astonishing decision. She appointed the young girl to be in charge of drafting and issuing imperial decrees. To elevate her from the status of a palace slave, Wu bestowed upon Wan'er the title of Tsai Ren, an imperial consort rank, a rare honor for someone of her background. From that moment on, Wu kept Wan'er close, trusting her deeply, despite being the very person who had condemned her family and enslaved her as a child. Through her extraordinary intellect and the unparalleled privilege of learning directly from China's most powerful ruler, Wan'er rapidly mastered both statecraft and literature. This dual cultivation propelled her ascent, ultimately establishing the former slave girl as one of the most formidable political figures of the Tang Dynasty. As Wan'er's destiny underwent its metamorphosis, Taiping too approached the great turning point of her life. 2 years after Princess Taiping's magnificent wedding, her father, Emperor Gaozong, passed away. Taiping's parents had borne 4 sons, but the first 2 died young. Her third brother, Li Xian, ascended the throne, only to be deposed by Wu less than 2 months into his reign. Then her fourth brother, Li Dan, was placed on the throne with Wu's backing, though he would soon become little more than a puppet emperor. Their mother, now the Empress Dowager Wu, gradually sidelined Li Dan and began preparing to claim the throne for herself, to become the first female emperor in Chinese history. As Wu tightened her grip, disaffected royals and officials rose in revolt, including Taiping's brother-in-law. The Empress Dowager's retribution was swift and brutal. The rebellion's leaders were executed, followed by a systematic purge of the Li clan. Only Wu's own children were spared. As for Shui Xiao, Taiping's husband, historical records are inconsistent. Some claim he was involved in the rebellion, others suggest he barely knew about it. Regardless, Wu did not spare him. He was sentenced to a brutal punishment, caned 100 times, and later starved to death in prison. There is no surviving record of what Princess Taiping endured during this time, how desperately she may have pleaded for her husband's life, or how fiercely she begged her mother for mercy. But one thing is clear: this was a turning point. Having witnessed firsthand what power could achieve and what power could destroy, Taiping began to awaken to the political storm swirling around her, and she was standing at the center. As the daughter of Wu Zetian, she realized she was already entangled in the center of a vast, shifting web of power. There was no longer a place for innocence or detachment. From that moment on, she transformed, from a joyful princess with a loving family and a carefree life, into a sharp-minded politician, determined to shape her own destiny. Survival required not just weathering the tempest, but commanding it. As the imperial princess and Wu Zetian's most beloved daughter, Taiping's marriage was once again arranged, both to safeguard her future and to serve the dynasty's political designs. After Xuexiao's tragic death, Wu began searching for a new husband for her beloved daughter. Her first choice was her own favorite nephew, a man who had played a key role in helping her ascend to power and had once been a strong candidate for crown prince. Princess Taiping knew that her second husband would inevitably come from the house of Wu, but she boldly rejected. Instead, she chose a man named Wu Yuji. Handsome, kind, docile, and well-mannered. Most importantly, he had no involvement in politics. But Wu Yuji was already married. To clear the path, Wu coldly ordered the execution of his innocent wife, and soon after, a grand and opulent wedding ceremony was held for Taiping and her chosen husband. Only 2 months later, Wu Zetian officially claimed the throne and became the first female emperor in Chinese history. In this second marriage, Taiping's role and behavior changed dramatically from her earlier life as a dutiful wife and mother. Now she indulged in luxury, had affairs with officials, and was known to keep many male lovers. When she encountered someone particularly skilled in serving women, she would even present them to her mother, the emperor. Wu often remarked that Taiping's beauty, temperament, and intelligence were strikingly similar to her own. This resemblance deepened Wu's affection and trust in her daughter, and she frequently discussed matters of state with her. Taiping, ever perceptive, responded with grace. She expressed just the right amount of interest and ability, enough to gain her mother's trust and appreciation, yet never enough to suggest any personal ambition or desire for political power. Taiping and Shangguan Wan'er, each growing from a different starting point, gradually became the two most indispensable figures by Wu Zetian's side. From the age of 13, Wan'er served closely under Wu Zetian, who had personally selected her for her extraordinary talent. Loyal and brilliant, Wan'er accompanied Wu through every political transformation, from queen to empress dowager to emperor. Over the years, she earned Wu's deep trust and was gradually entrusted with significant authority. Beyond draft and imperial edicts, she began issuing policies and making crucial decisions as a de facto chancellor. Princess Taiping, on the other hand, was Wu's beloved daughter, a living reflection of the emperor herself. Though she never openly sought political power, she remained a devoted daughter, ever by Wu's side. Together, Taiping and Wan'er became the two most cherished and trusted women in Wu Zetian's life. For decades, they flourished under Wu's favor, nurtured and empowered in a court that prized brilliance, loyalty, and cunning. After Wu Zetian seized the throne and became the emperor, wresting power from her own sons, Princess Taiping, who posed no threat to her rule, became a rare and precious source of familial closeness. In a palace filled with intrigue and shifting loyalties, Taiping offered her mother a quiet intimacy that only a daughter could. Taiping and Wan'er remained close to Wu for many years, but the nature of their own relationship is a subject of historical debate. Some sources suggest they lived parallel lives, independent of one another. Others describe Taiping as seeing Wan'er as no more than a servant. Still others paint them as rivals, allies, or even close friends bound by mutual admiration. Whatever the truth, one fact remains clear. During this golden era of power and possibility, they both flourished. Their influence deepened, their skills sharpened, and they formed a unique and complex bond, one forged in the heart of the empire, under the gaze of history's only female emperor. In Wu Zetian's later years, her favor fell upon the Zhang brothers, her handsome young concubines, introduced to her by none other than Princess Taiping. With the emperor's affection came unchecked power. The Zhang brothers soon abused their influence, leading to devastating consequences: the deaths of Princess Taiping's nephew and niece, the children of her third brother, as well as the downfall of an heir from the Wu family and the imprisonment of Taiping's own lover. As Wu's health declined, the Zhang brothers became increasingly dominant at court, enjoying unrestricted access to the aging emperor. Shielded behind the palace curtains, they manipulated imperial affairs, their ambitions growing bolder by the day. They began forging alliances with the House of Wu, conspiring to reshape the succession. It was even rumored that they forged decrees, or would eventually fabricate Wu's final will, to transfer the throne to the Wu family, abandoning the royal Li clan altogether. Despite being married into the Wu family, Princess Taiping remained steadfast in her loyalty to her birthright, the Li clan. Her political allegiance was clear. She supported her two brothers and the royal lineage from which she was born. When a high-ranking official proposed a coup to eliminate the Zhang brothers and restore imperial authority to Crown Prince Li Xian, Taiping did not hesitate. She joined the conspiracy that would ultimately change the course of history. Shangguan Wan'er, too, lent her support. Whether driven by foresight, persuasion, or loyalty to Taiping, she aligned herself with the Li faction, choosing the future over the past. Together, the two women, once jewels of the Wu court, became powerful forces behind a dynasty's return. Chancellors and generals, backed by Wu Zetian's three children, Li Xian, Li Dan, and Princess Taiping, carefully planned and launched the coup that led to the execution of the Zhang brothers. In the aftermath, Emperor Wu Zetian agreed to pass the throne to Li Xian. Li Xian, now known as Emperor Zhongzong of Tang, began rewarding those who had helped him reclaim the throne. His younger brother Li Dan and his sister Taiping were granted exceptional honors, political influence, and immense wealth in recognition of their pivotal roles in the coup. Princess Taiping was granted an extraordinary privilege: permission to establish a private secretariat with authority to appoint officials, an honor rarely bestowed upon any princess in Chinese history. This marked her transformation from royal figure to autonomous political force. A few months after the coup, Emperor Wu passed away. Taiping then redressed the name of her late first husband, Shui Xiao, relocating his grave and ensuring he was properly buried in the family's ancestral cemetery. Shangguan Wan'er was also elevated in both rank and responsibility. She was promoted to the high imperial consort title of Zhao Rong, though this title was symbolic, meant to grant her greater honor and authority. Wan'er was permitted to establish her own mansion outside the palace, allowing her to function like a senior male official, working in the court by day and returning home at night. Moreover, the alleged crimes of her grandfather and father were overturned. Their names were rehabilitated, and her mother was granted noble titles in recognition of their restored honor. As a remarkable stateswoman, Wan'er served as a de facto chancellor, drafting imperial decrees, announcing policies, and assisting the emperor in governing the empire. She ensured the preservation of many of Wu Zetian's key policies, while skillfully maintaining relations between the new emperor and the Wu clan. Beyond politics, Wan'er was celebrated as a brilliant poet and scholar. She was regarded as a leader of the literary realm, playing key roles in the development of the Imperial Academy, scholar selection, and serving as arbiter at imperial poetry symposiums. Though later generations often maligned her, questioning her loyalty, scrutinizing her private life, and criticizing her influence, even her harshest critics could not deny the brilliance of her mind, whether in matters of state or in the world of poetry. Beyond Shangguan Wan'er's extraordinary political acumen and literary brilliance, her love life has long intrigued the public and provided fodder for later scholars who sought to tarnish her legacy by weaponizing her private affairs. Yet, despite the gossip and speculation, it remains unclear whether she ever experienced true love. From the moment she entered Wu Zetian's service as the Empress's closest secretary, Wan'er's heart was no longer her own. Marriage was forbidden. Wu could not risk her forming political alliances through matrimony. For the 28 years she served Wu Zetian, there is no official record of Wan'er having any romantic relationships. However, court gossip and later speculation claim she had once been in love with Wu's second son, Li Xian, a gifted crown prince known for his literary talent. Li Xian had been appointed heir after the death of his older brother, and he and Wan'er, both gloriously brilliant, may have found solace in shared verse. Their mutual love of literature inspired whispers of romance, though no evidence confirms this. Tragically, when Li Xian was abolished by Wu, it was Wan'er herself who had to draft the Edict of Deposition, removing him from his position. He was banished and later forced to commit suicide. Perhaps their love was real, or perhaps it was merely a beautiful story imagined by those who wished to believe that someone as extraordinary as Wan'er had, at least once, known love, even if it was brief and ended in sorrow. Years later, when Li Xian returned as Emperor Zhongzong, he elevated Wan'er to the prestigious rank of Zhao Rong, a high-ranking imperial consort. Whether they shared a romantic relationship is unclear. It is highly possible that the title was honorary, recognizing her contributions rather than signifying affection. But it made her, nominally, the emperor's concubine, so she still couldn't marry anyone else. Wan'er was even allowed to build her own elegant residence outside the palace walls, rare for a woman at court. Her mansion became a hub of political and intellectual activity, and many officials visited her regularly. As a powerful chancellor and talented scholar, these visits, though likely political in nature, sparked rumors that she led an immoral life and disgraced the royal family. One of the more persistent rumors concerned her relationship with Cui Shi, a talented and attractive chancellor. It was said that they admired each other deeply, perhaps even loved one another. Yet Cui Shi was married and later allied himself with Empress Wei. Gossip also linked him to Princess Anle and Princess Taiping. Whether Wan'er and Cui Shi were truly lovers or simply political allies who shared mutual respect, their bond was shadowed by ambition, rivalry, and betrayal. Even if they did love each other, the relationship, like much of her life, was alloyed with the brutal realities of power. The rise of Princess Taiping and Shangguan Wan'er marked the continuation and expansion of an era in Tang history when women wielded unprecedented political power, following in the footsteps of Wu Zetian, the only female emperor of China. After Li Xian reclaimed the throne, another two women rose to power right alongside him. One was Empress Wei, his wife, who had followed him through every rise and fall, from crown prince to deposed emperor to exiled prince, and now back as emperor. The other was their daughter, Princess Anle. Historical records describe her as the most beautiful princess of the entire Tang Dynasty. Out of gratitude and affection for the women who stood by him through his darkest times, Li Xian indulged their every desire. They lived in extravagant luxury, sold government positions, and, according to records, maintained male lovers. Both Empress Wei and Princess Anle aspired to follow in Wu Zetian's footsteps, to seize the throne and become female rulers in their own right. Wei began modeling herself after Wu, promoting loyal officials, elevating her own family into powerful roles, appointing female officials and even generals, and taking an active role in government affairs. Princess Anle, since her mother Wei's only son was dead, directly asked her father to nominate her as crown princess, the legitimate heir to the throne. But their path to power had two major obstacles. One was Prince Li Dan, the emperor's younger brother and a former emperor himself. The other was Princess Taiping, whose intellect and temperament closely resembled those of their mother, Wu Zetian. With growing power and the emperor's unwavering love, Empress Wei and Princess Anle began to target Li Dan and Taiping, perceiving them as threats. The court turned into a place of whispered plots, suspicion, and quiet maneuvering. They began closely spying on Li Dan and Taiping, attempting to bring them down. In response, Li Dan and Taiping remained vigilant and cautious throughout this perilous period. Meanwhile, Wan'er, drawing on her years of political experience, clearly recognized the stark contrast between Wu Zetian and Wei and Anle from every perspective. As astute as she was, Wan'er could easily distinguish between exceptional rulers who could bring prosperity to the empire and those who were simply power-hungry and likely to plunge the kingdom into chaos. She repeatedly and fervently tried to persuade the emperor not to relinquish power to Wei and Anle. Some say Wan'er had long been on Taiping's side and would support her no matter what. Others believe she acted out of loyalty to the empire itself. Either way, the emperor did not nominate Anle as heir. But he also refrained from naming any of the sons born to his concubines as heirs either. The crown prince's seat stood empty as the court buzzed with unease. Then, after 5 years of Li Xian's second reign, he died suddenly. His refusal to name Princess Anle as heir led some to suspect that Anle and Wei had poisoned him. But the true cause of his death remains a mystery to this day. Wei kept the emperor's death a secret and instructed Shangguan Wan'er to forge a final imperial decree. In this decree, the emperor supposedly named his youngest son, Li Chongmao, as his successor. Since the boy's mother was a little-known court lady and he was still very young, Empress Wei, now Empress Dowager, would serve as regent. Wan'er immediately contacted Princess Taiping. Together, they agreed to follow the decree, but with one condition, that Li Dan, Taiping's fourth brother, be named co-regent to balance Wei's authority. Wei and her allies opposed this idea. They argued that Empress Dowager Wei alone should hold the regency. To consolidate her power, Wei quickly placed her families and supporters in charge of the military and key government posts, ensuring no one could challenge her rule. Soon after, her faction began planning to eliminate Li Dan and Princess Taiping entirely, removing the last remaining obstacles on the path for Empress Wei and Princess Anle to ascend the throne. But their plot reached the ears of Li Dan's third son, the ambitious and capable Li Longji. Li Longji, young, ambitious, and politically astute, saw his chance. He had 2 older brothers, both of whom were more eligible to inherit the throne than he was. As a brave and talented prince, Li Longji saw the growing opposition against Empress Dowager Wei and her apparent intent to seize the throne as a rare opportunity, perhaps his only chance to claim it for himself. So when he learned of Wei's secret plan, he chose not to inform his father or his older brothers. Instead, he went directly to Princess Taiping, seeking to form an alliance and launch a coup. According to Li Longji himself, the reason for keeping his family in the dark was the extreme danger of the plan. If it failed, he said, his father and brothers would not be implicated. But there may have been a deeper motive. If the coup were known and led by his father or either of his elder brothers, Li Longji would have no chance at the throne. Princess Taiping agreed to the coup, not only to restore the throne to the House of Li, but possibly to gain greater power for herself. She also kept the plan from her brother Li Dan, perhaps to protect him, or perhaps to ensure that she could take more credit for the outcome. Despite the fact that Wei had already seized control of the army and many key officials, Taiping and Li Longji carefully laid their plans. Then they struck. The result was the Tanglong coup, the largest coup in Tang history, involving tens of thousands of soldiers. Taiping didn't just plan and mobilize resources, she even sent her second son to personally lead their household guard in battle. This was no mere power struggle, it was a fight for survival. And Li Longji, the overlooked prince, was about to rewrite his destiny. The Tanglong coup, planned by Princess Taiping and executed by Li Longji, achieved overwhelming success and sent shockwaves throughout the empire. During the coup, Empress Dowager Wei and Princess Anle were executed, along with their entire families and key supporters. As soldiers stormed the palace and scattering terrified maids and concubines, Shangguan Wan'er calmly took out the imperial edict she had co-written with Princess Taiping, an edict that supported Li Dan as regent. It was the clearest evidence that she had been on Taiping's side all along. Then she stepped out to face the approaching Coup army, as if expecting them. Li Longji hesitated, but only briefly. He ordered Wan'er's execution on the spot, without notifying Princess Taiping. This, despite the fact that one of his most trusted and powerful officials pleaded with him to spare her life. To kill such a high-ranking chancellor, one who had long been trusted by both Emperor Wu and Emperor Li Xian, and who had presented clear proof of loyalty to Taiping, was highly controversial. And what's more, Li Longji didn't even wait a few hours to verify the situation with Taiping. There has been much speculation about this abrupt and ruthless decision. The most likely explanation is that Li Longji realized Wan'er, a woman of unmatched talent and influence, had aligned herself with Taiping, his powerful aunt, his father's most trusted sister, and a woman who closely resembled Emperor Wu in both intellect and ambition. If Wan'er and Taiping, the two brightest women ever trained by Wu Zetian, stood united, they would pose a serious threat to his path to the throne. Shangguan Wan'er, the eminent female chancellor who rose to extraordinary heights purely through her brilliance in governance and literature, ultimately lost her life for being too gifted and too dangerous in the eyes of an ambitious prince. Behind every successful coup lies a significant shift in power. Princess Taiping forced Li Chongmao, the child emperor installed by Empress Dowager Wei, to abdicate. Li Dan, her fourth brother, was supported to ascend the throne as Emperor Ruizong. Li Longji's two older brothers, recognizing both his capabilities and ambition, stepped aside and insisted that he be named Crown Prince, despite their greater eligibility under tradition. Taiping was granted even greater power and land, and her brother trusted her more than before. But she was deeply upset upon hearing of Shangguan Wan'er's death. She commanded the emperor to grant Wan'er a noble posthumous title, Hui Wen, meaning benevolent and magnificent. Taiping had a lavish tomb built for her, and Wan'er was buried with honor in the cemetery of Taiping's own family. At the same time, Wan'er's death served as a sobering warning. The swift and ruthless way Li Longji eliminated Wan'er revealed not only his decisiveness, but also his hostility. It signaled that he already viewed Taiping as a potential threat, the next obstacle in his path. Princess Taiping was not born a politician. She was once a carefree princess, blessed with loving parents and a beloved husband. After losing her first husband, she began to participate in politics, grasping for power in hopes of protecting those she cared about and gaining control over her own fate. But for most of that time, she remained in defense mode. When others framed her, she counterattacked. When the throne or the Li clan was in danger, she fought back. And with her brilliance and influence, she always prevailed. However, after the Tang Long coup, she shifted to offense mode, this time targeting her former ally, Li Longji. Perhaps she sensed his growing hostility and exceptional capability. Perhaps she sought revenge for Wan'er. Or perhaps, in the end, she set her sights on the throne itself. Whatever the reason, she took an active role in nearly all political affairs, using every means to expand her power. Meanwhile, her fourth brother, Li Dan, was also a master of political balance. He had once participated in the coup that transferred the crown from their mother, Emperor Wu Zetian, to their brother, fully aware that in the face of imperial power, even family ties could become meaningless. Moreover, he had come to understand the drive and talent of his third son, Li Longji, who, wielding power beyond his formal rank, rallied tens of thousands of soldiers, led a sweeping coup, and unflinchingly executed Wan'er. Thus, as an emperor whose throne had been secured by his younger sister and son, Li Dan also needed Taiping to check and balance Li Longji's rising power. Emperor Ruizong Li Dan did his best to balance the influence of Taiping and Li Longji, consulting both on most major policies before making decisions. With his support and her own political acumen, Taiping gained the backing of more than half of all court officials. Among the 7 chancellors, 5 were her staunch supporters, some chosen for their talent, others said to be her lovers. In the art of recognizing ability and placing the right people in the right roles, she closely resembled her mother, Wu Zetian. Meanwhile, Taiping kept a close watch on Li Longji, sending spies to monitor him while constantly warning her brother about the crown prince's growing political ambition and shrewd maneuvering. Her ultimate goal was clear: to persuade her brother to replace the crown prince. But Li Dan, unwilling to upset the fragile balance of power, refused to act on her suggestions. 2 years later, in response to a rare celestial phenomenon, Li Dan formally abdicated in favor of Li Longji. However, under Taiping's influence, he retained key powers, such as the appointment of high-ranking officials and final decisions on major state affairs. At the same time, Taiping intensified her efforts to build military support and accelerate plans to depose Li Longji. On the other side, Li Longji found that ruling in name alone, under heavy restrictions, with limited power and dwindling allies, was not what he had fought for. He began secretly planning a new coup, but the plot was leaked. Though he denied involvement, several of his key supporters were exiled. Now officially emperor, Li Longji found himself boxed in, with strong restrictions, weakened support, and little real authority. Worse yet, the failed plot only heightened the suspicions of both Li Dan and Taiping. Not long after, Li Dan ordered Li Longji to leave the capital on an inspection tour of the frontier, a signal that he might be considering replacing the emperor altogether. The balance of power was finally tipping in Taiping's favor. Sensing the danger of losing not only the throne but possibly his own life, Li Longji chose to strike first. He led a group of elite soldiers, tricked, ambushed, and executed the generals and chancellors loyal to Princess Taiping. Then he went to his father, Li Dan, claiming that Taiping had been plotting a rebellion, and that he had eliminated her supporters to prevent it. Li Dan, now fully aware that he had no remaining power base to balance his son's growing dominance, relinquished all authority and officially retired from politics. Li Longji did not send soldiers to kill Taiping, nor did he pursue or imprison her. She fled to the mountains and spent 3 quiet days in a secluded temple. Perhaps during that time, she reflected on her loving childhood, her happy marriage, her years of glory and power, her lost love, or perhaps she contemplated ways to rise again. In the end, she accepted her defeat and chose to face it with dignity. She returned home and took her own life, as Li Longji had silently but firmly compelled. When Li Longji launched his coup to eliminate Princess Taiping's supporters, it was under the pretext that she was plotting a rebellion. As the victor, he faced no obligation to present evidence. Whether Taiping truly intended to rebel remains a mystery. What is known is that she repeatedly urged her brother, Li Dan, to replace Li Longji with another crown prince. However, many people questioned whether it was even necessary for Taiping to rebel when she already had the upper hand. Moreover, given her talent, powerful supporters, and successful coup experience, if a rebellion had truly been planned, they should not have been defeated so abruptly and completely. As for the claim that she sought the throne for herself, following in the footsteps of her mother, Wu Zetian, there is no concrete evidence or official record to support this. It may be that later historians projected such ambition onto her, but the truth remains uncertain. 3 years after Taiping's death, her brother Li Dan also passed away. Throughout his life, Li Dan endured bloody purges, shifting loyalties, and the endless turmoil of court politics. He rose and fell with the tides of power, yet in his final years, he let go of it all. He found solace in literature, Taoist cultivation, and the gentle rhythms of family life. When he fell seriously ill, he declined treatment from imperial physicians, calmly accepted his fate, and passed away in peace. After their departure, the Tang Dynasty entered both its most glorious height and the beginning of its eventual decline, under the long and controversial reign of Li Longji. After Emperor Wu Zetian opened the gates and brought women's participation in state affairs to its zenith, the downfall of Princess Taiping and Shangguan Wan'er marked the end of women in Tang governance. Power was both the origin and the end of all their struggles, rises and falls, triumphs and sorrows throughout their lives. Each of them once held supreme authority and prestige. At different points in time, they wielded immense influence over the court and determined the fates of many. Yet more often than not, it seemed they had very few real choices. Wan'er, born into a humble background but blessed with extraordinary talent, was recognized, empowered, trusted, and admired for her brilliance. In the end, that same brilliance became a threat to others' power, and she was killed in the vortex of political rivalry. Taiping, on the other hand, was born into unmatched honor and favor, but this also destined her to be forever entangled in political strife. She inherited her mother's beauty, talent, temperament, and capability, and was also fated to bear the fear, hatred, and resistance that people harbored toward her mother. Taiping and Wan'er, both raised and favored by Emperor Wu herself, were bound to either thrive in the storm of power or be drowned by it. Unless they had no desires. But they did have desires. Taiping hoped to keep the imperial throne within the Li family, and she succeeded. She also hoped to protect those she cared about. But in the end, she lost her first husband, lost Wan'er, lost several of her own children who joined her political efforts, and ultimately lost herself and everything else. As for Wan'er, it was likely never about the throne or absolute power. As a woman with no powerful background, caught in the storm of politics, all she likely wanted was to survive with dignity through her talent. Perhaps, too, she wished to support her dear friend, Taiping. Maybe even go further, to influence the literary world and history with her brilliance, as other men had done, and leave her name in the annals of time. In that, she succeeded. During Taiping's time in power, at her request, Wan'er's works were collected and published. Later, after Taiping's fall from grace, many of these writings were lost. What survives today is only a fraction of her original output. But even this is enough to attest to her brilliance, recording how she, amid a galaxy of brilliant Tang poets, left her own luminous mark. As the final lines of her epitaph, likely composed by Princess Taiping, proclaimed, "For millennia to come, people will still sing praises of your excellence." Thank you for joining us on this journey through the lives that built a civilization. Throughout this series, we will walk in the footsteps of giants, each shaped by their time and each in turn shaping the course of Chinese history. Their lives were woven with brilliance and flaws, ambition and sacrifice, triumph and tragedy, cunning and wisdom, splendor and compromise, revealing both the brightest and darkest sides of humanity. They rose in times of chaos, stood tall in moments of uncertainty, and dared to dream beyond the boundaries imposed upon them. Their choices carved legacies that continue to echo through time, etched in stone, sung in poetry, and remembered in stories. If you enjoyed this journey, please like, comment, and subscribe to stay connected for more stories that shape the course of history.